So Robin just asked me to go through what Maths is doing to prepare the year 7 to 10s for SATE. So since I can't be here, I decided to do this via YouTube, get some more views, get some more subscribers, hopefully retire early. Alright, so here's an example of what our assessment tasks used to look like. So this is an example of an exam, and we'd have two exams. One would be understanding and fluency, and the other would be problem solving and reasoning. So the way we would assess the exam would be per the criteria from QCAA or ACARA, and we're just given basically free rein as to how we're going to identify who gets an A, a B, and a C for these different criteria. So the way traditionally that we do it and most other schools do it is they have 11, 12 questions that range from a C level, B level, or A level question. So in this paper, the first 5 questions are C level, and we basically tick this grid according to how well the student does on that question. And then the 2 papers, we just make up a rule for how we get their overall grade, and each of the individual questions will have a solution, and we'll make up some other grid for determining what grade the student gets per question. Okay, so that's what it sort of used to look like, but obviously now we have a bit of guidance from QCAA in terms of what exams will look like in senior. So here's the example of a marking scheme for the new Maths B subject. Instead of having that big grid, we just look at these assessment objectives, which are the same for all of the maths subjects. Basically it just captures what we expect students to do when they're solving problems. We just apply marks, so we can set the paper out of 40 marks, convert it to a percentage, and there's a 15-point scale. So the 15 we take as A+, 14 is A, 13 is A-, etc., just based on the percentage of marks they get over the whole paper. So a sample mark scheme is here. So there's the solutions, and I think in this one each of the ticks is worth like half a mark, and it's annotated on the side as to why they get that particular mark. So all of the ticks that are associated there are given for things that relate to those assessment objectives. So the idea we have to prepare them for the new SATE is in junior school to try and mirror what they'll see in the senior school. So instead of having understanding and problem solving exams, we have non-calculator and calculator exams, which mirrors what they'll see in senior school. So the new paper has slightly different design. We give them marks for the 3 different types of questions and ultimately give them a percentage for their grade overall. In this grid, it's interesting that our pass mark is 40%, which might seem low, but if Peachy's there, he can explain that the pass mark in the previous papers was really 25%, and by moving to a 40% pass mark, we've actually had a lot more students fail than they did in the previous system. So the questions are pretty similar. In the marking scheme, we provide exactly how they'll be given marks and total it up over the 2 papers. So the teachers are given basically things that they need to emphasize when they're teaching these topics, so that the students know that if they don't write a sentence to explain their answer, then they won't get that particular mark for that question. So the idea is that it mirrors exactly what will happen when they get to year 11 and 12, that someone else will mark the paper according to like a really strict marking grid, and the students need to understand what things they need to do in specific problems to get those grades. So that's exams. In terms of assignments, the assignments are pretty specific as well. So this is an example of a PVM assignment. The students are given like a really small context and given a really small question that they need to work on by themselves, write up to 10 pages of a report, and needs to be able to be read without looking at this task sheet. So they give it a little bit of scaffolding, but not much. Again, some criteria that will be graded out of 20 marks. And there's a general problem-solving strategy that you need to use for all of the assignments. So we've had a go at one of these in Year 9 in this Term 1, and we're going to have a go at them in Year 10 this term. So this is what the new Year 9 assignment looks like. It looks essentially like the new ones from SATE. Basically steal all their stationery, make it look the same. So yeah, a little context. This is attached to the excursion that we went to at CQU. A little task here, and then that problem-solving strategy again. So we're starting them at Year 9 for the real problem-solving strategy, and in Year 7 and 8 they'll still get marked on the same criteria, but in some context that they're familiar with. So maybe a letter instead of a report. Got the keyword, so all of these words are used in the questions in the assignment, so the students can look it up and know what it means when they're asked to solve for a particular problem. And there's a marking grid here where we'll essentially give them grades out of 4, 7, 5 and 4 to get them their total of 20 for the assignment, which is exactly what will happen in senior. So I guess in summary, like the main changes to the exams and assignments is to make them look as much like the senior ones as possible. Even for the exams, we essentially use the same questions, but just putting in a different format, putting slightly different expectations around it. The students' results were completely different. Pretty big failure rates. That's why I'm doing this video remotely, so I can board my flight to Mexico and retire over there and not have to deal with the consequences of many students failing this term. But it's better that they fail this term rather than when they get to Year 11 and 12 when it really matters. Probably the only other thing we're doing in preparation is in our sort of unit planning. So when we look at the syllabus, or when we look at one of these sample teaching, learning and assessment plans, we don't see textbook chapters like we would previously. We basically see a whole heap of learning goals in our TLAPs. So teachers essentially need to get used to this idea that they're going to need to engage with this sort of a document and be able to plan lessons for it, be able to collaborate with other teachers and share ideas. So in Year 8 to 10, for each of the topics that we go through, we've got this sort of collaborative OneNote where we just start with the ACARA descriptors and basically go through lessons with learning goals associated to each lesson. And then in the, I guess the detail of the lesson, a bit of a clarification on what the learning goal means, some teaching strategies and ideas, some resources that were found, and how to use ICT, how it links to later years. The objective reminder is basically reminding teachers what things they need to emphasize with students so that they can get full marks for each of the questions. So this is sort of a unit planning template we're going to roll out for the new senior subjects coming in, and use the sample TLAPs from QCAA as the basis for, I guess, filling in this sort of shell of a unit and lesson plan, and not rely on textbooks, because we don't know what the exam's going to look like. We're just given the learning goals or the topics, the subject matter, and have to go from there. So it's just getting used to all those sorts of things. So hopefully that was useful. As always, please like, subscribe, share. I don't know what these YouTube people say, but hopefully you're having a good day. All right, bye.